Today we got ANDOR Season 2, Episode 1. Reaction.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full ANDOR Season 2 episode
I liked
1,
it
2,
so
and
far,
3 video.
the
They're dropping
series.
3 episodes every week for 4 weeks. So what they've done is that every 3 episodes this season represents a block of a single year in Andor's life up to the rest of the way to Rogue One. So the very last episode will end right as the beginning of Rogue One is beginning. I don't know what other kind of crazy cameos from Rogue One we're going to see this season, but like K2SO and obviously Krennic are the real big ones. If you're brand new to the channel,
was on the
be sure to
last one,
subscribe to get all the episodes. We will see if there's any other big
which
cameos
was crazy
from the
to
Rogue
see.
One movie, but generally that's where I would look to when you're thinking about who else might cameo on this. They said that there were a couple actors they weren't able to get back from the Rogue One movie that they had to recast too, meaning there might be a couple big surprises later this season. They did not say who they recast, but like obviously they're not going to recast Darth Vader, they're not going to recast the Emperor or anything like that. Most of the real big Easter eggs on Andor tends to be the stuff inside Luthen's shop. But the title of episode 1 was 1 year later, obviously a reference to it literally starting 1 year after the end of season 1 on Ferrix. During the cycling helmets, you also notice the droids at the beginning, they add the Andor specific characters like B2 Emo. Weirdly that they didn't add K2SO's head. Maybe they'll add him to this little intro later
forgot about my
in
boy.
the series. But there's like a real quick tag at the beginning just to place you in the timeline and to remind you of the end of season 1 with them starting on Ferrix with the 1 year later title, the morning bell ringing like it did during season 1, and the BBY4 date is a reference to 4 years before the Battle of Yavin, because that's the way they denote a lot of dates in the Star Wars timeline.
I did not know what that means, bro.
ABY after the Battle of Yavin. For example, when we're talking about dates during the Mandalorian series, or that part of the timeline, like during Ahsoka in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, we're talking about ABY dates. The other reason they use this date here is to just help casuals keep track of the shifting timeline of the season, because each block of episodes each week will be 1 year in his life. So we'll see if they use the date during next week's block 2 at the beginning of episode 4. As of me posting this video, I have not seen the rest of the season, but there are like a lot of other people out there that have seen the entire season already. Then it jumps to a TIE fighter construction facility where Andor is stealing the TIE Avenger prototype. There are a number of more advanced types of TIE fighters in the Star Wars universe that started to show up in this part of the timeline, like Thrawn created the TIE Defender from the video games on the Rebels series. Maybe they'll eventually do that in live action. Darth Vader had personally modified his TIE fighter to create the TIE Advance, but that's a one-off ship. Think of the TIE Avenger as like the next evolution from the TIE Interceptor. Heavier weapons, more defenses, and obviously it has a hyperspace drive. Not all the
is this about the new ship that they had? That shit was pretty cool.
The way they present this, though, this seems like a one-off prototype, like it is the only TIE Avenger
it looked really
that they have here at
badass.
this facility that's been completed. We learn this tech's name is Nia, hesitates for a moment because she's involved with Andor's mission, the Rebels, to steal the prototype, but she isn't directly connected to him specifically. They're just meant to be two people that wind up in this situation together because they've both been working with the Rebels. They reveal this is Center Test Facility number 73, Center Fleet Systems,
how many
where the
fucking test facilities did they have?
Types of TIE fighters, like the many line-wide numbers of TIE fighters. There are a couple snow troopers in the background patrolling the halls because this is a very snowy environment where they're at.
I would love to be
when she tells them that the
trooper,
password today is Kafrene, that's actually a reference to the Ring of Kafrene, a big deep space mining colony where Andor learned of the existence of the Death Star. Andor also travels there during the events of Rogue One.
He's telling people they're making a weapon.
Notice when she gives him the key to actually steal it, it's a cylinder. That's what the cylinders on Imperial uniforms are for. They're like little keys that grant each of them access to systems or places. Typically, the number of cylinders an Imperial officer has kind of denotes how important they are because of how much access they have. Like the more cylinders means the more access. Their whole conversation here with her being kind of nervous,
just have
letting
to
you know that she's just a regular citizen who happens to be working for the Empire in this facility here, but is sympathetic to the rebellion and wanted to help them. It has been working with like a totally different group.
I wonder if they
Andor just
killed her
came
or
in
what.
on a job. It's very compartmentalized, the rebellion right now. We'll probably see later this season. There are a couple moments specifically in the next couple of episodes that sort of shout out Yavin 4 and the rebellion forming on Yavin 4 eventually. But at this earlier point in the timeline, the rebels are still just a bunch of disparate cells all over the galaxy that aren't really connected except very loosely through people like Luthen. So that's why the general tone of their meeting
So he
here is just
started
like,
it all, I
hey, thank you
guess.
for helping out.
Technically.
Maybe at some point in the future we will eventually see each other. But they mostly use his speech here for him to restate the sort of stakes for the season and for the rebellion just in general, like why it's so important that the rebellion exists and why they need to be successful. Because if they don't, everybody is going to die.
Freedom.
So it's sort of the show
They need that
reminding
freedom.
you why it exists for like a brief hot second at the very beginning here. Love the very comedic way that they treat him stealing this too. Like, it's a very cool action scene, but also very funny at the same time. Where like they try to play it like this really badass kind of thing, where just all I gotta do
He
is
was
just fly
struggling,
right out
boy.
this open door. But nope, just completely botches it. Has no idea how to fly it. Does the worst possible escape ever. If you're a big fan
Barely
of
got
video
out.
games, you have heard of button mashing. That is
Right.
basically what he does
That's
to escape.
basically
Here,
it,
is
bro.
just mash a whole bunch of buttons on all the consoles. Generally, though, the
Hey,
interior
he got
looks
it
amazing.
somehow.
Like the sets that they built here is crazy. You kind
Yeah,
of
that
see
was
why
nice,
the
bro.
series cost so much money because they built so much of it physically. We've seen the inside of TIE fighters before, but like never quite to this level of detail. So this is actually really, really cool. Shout out to all the people out there that nerd over all the schematics and diagrams and all the books with all the cross sections of the ships. Those are actually really, really cool. I think
Yeah, that
this is
shit
also
was
the first
badass,
time
bro.
we've seen someone try to drive a TIE fighter across the ground this way, like finally using the canyons to escape. Just more jokes about him bouncing off of each side of the cliffs, showing you how strong and resilient this particular brand of TIE fighter is, this particular model. Because under normal circumstances, if you stared at a TIE fighter
That
too
shit
hard,
explode,
it would
bro.
blow up.
Yep.
So I think part of the idea is they want to show you that the TIE Avenger here, like this more advanced model, can handle
I
a
wish they
lot
would have
more
used
battle
it though.
damage before it's destroyed.
See it more in
You have to
action. Would
imagine
have been
Luthen
cool.
looking at it at some point later being like, wow, there's a lot of battle damage on there. Did you get in a big fight? And them all just lying to him like, yes, there was a giant fight. We barely got away with our lives. When really all the damage that it suffered was mostly from stupidity and then just not understanding how to use
Yeah,
it.
not knowing how to
We
use
go
it, bro.
back to his rebel friends from Ferrix that are now on a completely different planet, hiding out in the middle of his mission. Like they're just waiting for him to
These
get done
first
with the
episodes were
mission,
crazy though.
including B2 Emo. And they play this scene like a bit of a twist where you see this new character who seems like a really shady Imperial that's getting drop on them, and it winds up being a nightmare of Bix's because of all her PTSD trauma from the torture she endured at Dedra's hands last season. We go to Mon Mothma's family estate.
Yeah, they're
on
gonna have a
Chandrila.
showdown,
We've
I
only briefly
think.
seen the planet in Star Wars
They
movies
got
and
to,
TV
bro.
shows before, like very, very briefly. This is the first time we've really spent any time here. They like really, really use this to push into a lot of their history and lore in ways that we haven't seen before.
We need more of it, bro.
All this action is mostly just centered on the wedding of her daughter Leda with Davos Skolden's son. He's also Chandrila from the same planet, but in deep with the Empire, and he's just super, super shady. There are a lot of turns of phrase and a lot of Chandrilan customs and history and lore that they get into, particularly the ancient infinite Rakatan Empire and a lot of other things from Star Wars history. So we'll talk about that as we go along through the episodes. But one of the early examples is when they say praise Mothma, which is basically her family, like that's her house's name, but they haven't ever really explained too much about Mon Mothma's history in the books before. There are a couple points later in the episode where like she references her mother and her family history a little bit, but that's
She
about
didn't want
it.
her daughter to
She
get
meets with
married,
Velsartha,
bro.
her cousin, part of her Mothma house, so like she's rich, like Mon Mothma's family is rich. Clocking that Luthen has surprisingly showed up without her inviting him at the wedding because he came with Davos Skolden as part of that mission to get that ancient temple statue. She also notices that Takeholma is there, the powerful Chandrilan banker from Season 1, who seemed like he was sympathetic to the rebellion, but winds up being this big twist where he winds up being just as shady as any of the other
You trying to go
Imperials.
snitch.
Love the way here, though, that Luthen pours on his public persona. Like, this is a masterclass in acting, the way that his personality just shifts when he locks in on this public persona. Clea then explains she's also here as Luthen's aide as well, just because they're bringing this particular statue to the wedding as a gift. They spend most of this block of episodes wondering what happened to Andor because he's stuck with that other group on Yavin 4. Don't worry, we'll get to that Easter egg too. That was actually a pretty funny twist after everything he went through on that planet with that group that had been stranded.
Bruh, I thought he was
We
gonna
wound up
help them,
getting a
but
much better look at the place
I
Andor's
mean,
friends went to.
he just got away.
Wow is
I
the
don't
planet
blame
they're
him.
calling it, a larger settlement nearby where they basically harvest grain that the Empire takes. Basically, the Empire has to get his food from somewhere. This planet is just one of those places. What winds up happening, though, is that the Empire does a routine audit of where it gets all of its stuff from, so it just happens to be here for that reason. Like, it isn't looking for them specifically after what happened on Ferrix, but
Bruh, he
they're
was crazy.
undocumented
I'm glad
illegals,
they
so obviously there's a lot of
got
metaphors
rid of
to
him.
real-life stuff going on here, too. But just talking about the Star Wars context, if the Imperials were to investigate them, they'd learn that they were the ones from Ferrix, and that would get them arrested. That's the whole problem
Yeah,
here. It's not the fact that they're
you
undocumented
gotta hide
illegals,
before
it's the
they
fact that they would find out that they were from Ferrix.
document or
We
check
see
where their
Andor taking the TIE
identity,
Avenger to the
basically.
handoff that he's supposed to deliver it to on the planet that is
Gotta
Yavin
get
4
up out of
revealed to be,
there.
but winds up running into a bunch of other rebels that were in a downed ship without really knowing who they are, not really being that friendly. They've only been stranded here for a couple days, so like it hasn't been a long time, but things have gone south for their group. Like, it is not looking good for them. He basically spends the next couple of days, this like whole block of episodes almost being
Bruh,
stuck
they're
with
so
them at their
dumb.
mercy, with them trying to
They
escape
could
the
have just
planet
took
because they're
him
running out
to
of
get
food
food,
fast,
bruh.
and there are very large
It was
animals
not that
nearby.
serious.
If you've read any of the Jedi Academy EU books or like any of the classic Star Wars Legends books that deal with Luke Skywalker's Jedi Academy on Yavin 4, they get into a lot of the creatures in and around this place. It's a very, very dangerous place. Yavin 4 is just a very powerful place in the Force in general. But part of the joke here is that the group that got stranded has no idea that the rebels are eventually going to make their main base. It's like a whole bunch of people and
That's
a whole bunch of
foreshadowing,
supplies are
bruh.
going to show up really soon. So even though they're treating this like a life and death situation, like we need to escape this planet, we're all going to die here, and they all wind up infighting, eventually if they just wait long enough, they'll be totally fine.
What is
Right.
this? It's a chance for you to make a fresh start. We think you might be able to help.
We will see how many blocks of episodes we go, though, before the rebellion sets up shop on Yavin 4 inside those temples.
I didn't even
Then we
think
go
we
to
were
a
gonna
place
get
called the
that.
Malthine Divide in this
Shit,
snowy
I'm with it.
environment. It's a new place in Star Wars. We've never actually been to this planet before, where Krennic holds a secret high-level meeting to explain the new, quote-unquote, unlimited energy source the Empire has found on Gorman. So a big deal this season is that they're going to explain the Gorman massacre that's been referenced a lot in Star Wars history is this huge defining event that sort of tipped the scales in the creation of the larger formal rebellion. So this meeting is meant to be kind of
That's why
darkly
everybody was
ironic,
like,
like
nah,
darkly
fuck all
comedic,
this. We gotta
because
fight
Krennic
back.
wants it to seem like this really big thing, like this really big operation, really clandestine. The Empire wants to control the planet, and they're probably going to wind up destroying it by overmining it for this unlimited energy source. But the Emperor obviously cares way more about the unlimited energy source than he does about the actual people living there.
They're just
So they
acting
just need
like
to
it's
find
for
a
the
way to minimize
spiders.
any blowback on the Empire, whatever they have to do to actually get that energy source. Ultimately, though, it will lead to their own destruction, like they'll sow the seeds of the larger rebellion that will form because of what they do on Gorman in order to get that energy source. One of the other really ironic
They
things that winds up
basically
happening,
started the
there are a lot of
rebellion
funny
then
moments, like you can
with
laugh
that.
at any number of things that any of the different characters say during this really secret meeting here. But one of the even more ironic things is that Dedra's idea for pulling off this plan for like getting control of Gorman is to sow the seeds of rebellion so that the Empire will have an excuse to roll in and kill or get rid of a whole bunch of people and take over the planet. So basically, they want the rebels to come to Gorman or to set up shop on Gorman and create a whole big
They
stink
could do
so they can roll in a whole bunch more forces.
yeah, they could take
Needless to
over,
say,
bruh.
it will not wind up going well for the Empire. When Krennic starts listing off really high-ranking people like Yularen that we saw during Season 1, Tarkin, the Emperor's mentioned a couple times. Love all the jokes about the PowerPoint presentation that he shows them on Gorman, the web weaving, all the fabric that they're famous for, and
They
also
don't care
the
about none of
department
that, bruh.
basically propaganda. That's essentially what this special department is. Like, all this misinformation, we created that. We're responsible for this. And even though this is obviously meant to be a big joke on tactics that the Empire uses, you have to imagine they're doing this on other planets, and there are real-life governments, like our own real-life governments, that do stuff like this with departments of propaganda. There are a
In
couple
line.
cool bits of lore, though, that they seed in here, where he talks about the Emperor's dream of energy independence, saying the Emperor is searching for a stable, unlimited power source, obviously because he wants to use it for weapons in defensive technology. They call the special mineral that they
For the
need to
Death
accomplish
Star.
that calcite. There are a couple major energy sources inside the Star Wars universe they've gotten to in the past, mostly on the animated series and the books. The movies don't really trouble themselves that much with like the particulars of how you power Star Destroyers or like the Death Star, for example. But that's part of the idea why the Emperor needs unlimited energy, because the Death Star eats so much energy. Like, it takes a lot of energy to power it. For example, the reason why the Death Star's super laser is so powerful
And they
is
started
because
using
they
the
use
sun.
kyber crystals to focus it. That's the same type of crystals that Jedi use in their lightsabers. Sith lightsabers too, but Sith lightsabers are really just made with a fallen Jedi's crystal or a crystal that they've been able to bleed. Never thought I would need to reference Acolyte, but you actually see them bleed a kyber crystal during the Acolyte series. That's probably what that series is going to go down for. Like, oh yeah, we had Darth Plagueis and we bled a kyber crystal.
Is sadly astonishing.
But part of the idea here is that the Empire has been
They
trying
should
to
make
create
a
synthetic versions of
series for
calcite, this
Darth
energy
Plagueis.
source, but like none of the things they've done have worked out. They need the authentic source, which is only found on Gorman, so they need Gorman at any cost. The reason why they're having this meeting at all, why the ISB, people like Dedra and her boss are here, are all because they don't want the entire Empire to turn against them, because Gorman is actually very politically powerful inside the Senate. So we haven't quite got to the point where the Emperor is just like pointing at stuff and telling people to give him what he wants. There's like still like a little bit of them hedging their bets, trying to do this in a more diplomatic way.
They ain't
but
want no
obviously that's going to
rebels.
fall
That's
down later
why.
this season when it turns into an all-out massacre on the planet. Why it's called the Gorman Massacre. Currently, there are 800,000 people living there, and remember,
Damn.
what they're going to do, overmining it, is going to literally crack the planet in half, like it's just going to break apart. Back on Minorau, his
Well,
friends learn about the Imperials
GG's.
showing up. There are a couple Easter eggs in the background, like you see Marva's picture on the wall near the comms. Remember her? There was actually an F-bomb that she dropped in the Andor Season 1 finale, but they said that the Star Wars, like the Lucasfilm people, were like, please take the F-bomb out of the actual episode. So we almost got an actual F-bomb in a
Why are
live-action
they so
Star
scared
Wars
of it, bruh?
series. They go back to Mon Mothma's estate. There are a couple moments where you see Luthen trying to pump people for information, where like he learns about Imperial naval movements and starts asking a whole bunch of questions, like he's super curious. Oh, what's going on? Where are all the troops going? When they say they're from Steergard, that's actually a big callback to Season 1 and the original way that he met Andor in the first place. So the idea is that he was trying to get that hyperdrive that Andor stole. He stole it from the Imperial base on Steergard, where this person came from. There's a brief moment between Belsartha and Clea. They were in a relationship that was implied during Season 1, but they didn't really spend a
Hey,
whole lot of time
yo,
on that.
she was with
We start
everyone,
to learn
bruh.
more about Takeoma's
Damn.
problems. He's separated from his wife. He's having financial problems. Things descend with that part of the storyline pretty fast, where eventually Mon Mothma learns that he's going to basically blab about all of her secrets to the Empire unless she pays him a lot of money. They wind up
Bruh.
ending episode 1 with Andor's little group
Blackmail.
on Yavin 4 starting their own little civil war, with like things getting worse and worse and worse for his situation. Like he's just trying to survive so that he can get away back to his friends and get away with the TIE Avenger. Episode 2 is titled Sagrona Tema, which is a reference to an ancient Chandrilan toast that her husband gives at the actual wedding banquet. He didn't really get a whole lot to do during
Bruh, how
Season
old
1.
is she
They give him a bunch
anyways,
of stuff in
bruh?
these first couple of episodes. So like he's way more of a character after these first couple of
Making
episodes
her get
than he
married
was during
with the
Season
other
1.
kid.
Back on Coruscant, Dedra
Kinda
asked
crazy,
to let off
bruh.
the Gorman project because she's still working on Axis, which goes all the way back to what was happening with Andor and uncovering the secrets of the rebellion. Like she basically was trying to ferret out the rebellion. And part of the gag here is that the Empire, through its own efforts, is inadvertently helping the rebels due to their massive levels of bureaucracy that all the competing interests in the Empire have. Like if they just left Dedra alone, she would probably have found out about the rebels much sooner, and there wouldn't be this big problem with them coming up in the Galactic Civil War. It's kind of a similar issue that happens to the New Republic during
There
the
would have been no
Mandalorian
more
part of the
Jedi.
timeline later after Return of the Jedi. Basically, any large
I need to
organization
start
like this,
watching it
Empire
again.
or New
The
Republic, becomes
movies.
too big for its own good at a certain
Been a
point
while
and starts
since
to
I watched
crumble
Star
and crack
Wars.
under the weight of
Besides
itself.
this,
Like you see both the Empire and the New Republic doing all kinds of stupid stuff leading to their own downfalls. Partagaz, to his credit, tries to explain how this is really a boon for Dedra, even though outwardly it will seem to her coworkers like it's a promotion. Like, you can ride this to the top, you will do well if you deliver for Krennic.
Gorman is a gift.
If she could deliver unlimited free energy to the Emperor, she would become like the Emperor's new favorite person next to Darth Vader. Back on Chandrila, Luthen brings in his special gift, the statue,
Apparently
which is
she
called a
didn't.
Candy Merle, which they think is barbaric, but say is worth more than the entire mansion. As they explain, it's a statue from a sacred temple on their planet that was stolen 25,000 years ago, meaning that it dates back to around the time of the origin of the original order that predated the actual Jedi before the schism of the light side and the dark side. Like that whole Dawn of the Jedi movie that they're trying to do in live action now would cover that part of the timeline. When they say the statues had been stolen
need
from the
to
planet
explain
by
stuff,
Rakatan
bro.
invaders, the infinite Rakatan Empire is this
Not
ancient
just
power
do
that
it.
controlled the Star Wars universe before the Old Republic was created. We also learned about the ancient history of both the different galaxies during Ahsoka with the ancient witch kingdom of the Dathmiri, so I wouldn't be surprised if the ancient witch kingdom of the Dathmiri came into conflict or fought with the Rakatans at some point in the past. Maybe we'll get a little more history of that during Ahsoka Season 2, like they'll tease it out a little bit more, but it sounds like we're going to be doing a lot of
Ahsoka
Mortis
Season
gods and,
2?
like really crazy, really
I don't
wild
even know.
lore stuff during that. When
It
they
was
talk about
coming
how
out,
Andor's
but
group
shit.
on Mina Rao is currently unavailable, it's a way to show you how precarious the rebel situation is at any given moment. The rebellion itself could be wiped out
Snitch.
for a million different reasons at any drop of a hat anywhere in the galaxy. Like, that's how precarious it is. So the idea that they were able to rise up, like form together as like an actual big rebellion and fight the Empire and win is meant to be like a 1 in a million kind of shot. Make as many
They
Death
did
Star
it, though.
trench run jokes as you want. Definitely a 1 in a million shot, but you had the Force on your side. When we go back to Andor's group on Yavin 4, we actually see the Star Wars versions of MREs. Those do not look very appetizing. Then we finally check in with Cyril Karn. We find out what he's been up to since last year. He's gotten 2 promotions in this time. Now he's the person giving the tours in the
Shit, that's
cubicle
'cause
farm
he's,
here. He literally tells the
with
guy that he's
Deborah.
talking to, I
What's
used
her
to be
name,
where
bro?
you stood just a little while ago. Basically
hitting that,
explaining his
bruh.
obsessive-compulsive nature helped him get his promotion. We go back to Andor's group on Mina Root, and the
No, it's
lieutenant
crazy,
winds
bruh.
up being super creepy on Bix, which winds up leading to a big confrontation later. But back on Coruscant, we learned that Dedra and Cyril Karn have been living in their own little weird relationship together since the end of Season 1. There's all kinds of jokes during the press tour about this.
He
where
finally
she's basically
slid
like this
in.
very evil mommy. There's not a whole lot of touching in their relationship, just a lot of her
What the
dominating him,
fuck?
which she does during this episode and then during the next episode when they're forced to have dinner with his mother. Which is what he's talking about when they keep talking about putting things off. Like, no, let's not put it off anymore. There are a couple real big Easter eggs that you probably spotted when we go back to Luthen's shop too. Clea walks past Padme's headpiece from the prequels, and this breathing mask also belonged to Plo Koon or
That's
someone
crazy.
else from his race. Anytime you go
notice
to
that.
Luthen's shop, you always keep your eyes peeled for Easter eggs all over the place.
Well,
The tablets in the back are the same ones from Season 1.
I'm
Like,
gonna do
most
that,
of this
huh?
is the same from Season 1. Usually it's the stuff in the middle that they wind up swapping out for different Easter eggs. In the back, this chalice might actually be from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, but it's not the actual Grail cup. It might just have been one of the other cups that was up on that pedestal at the end of the movie. But also in the background later, you wind up seeing that same Starkiller armor that we saw during Season 1. It's the same suit of armor, he's just been moving it around in the back of his shop there. Everybody wondering when they're going to do Starkiller in live
Bruh,
action.
that's
because they
gonna
just
bring
announced that
Star
Sam
Wars
Witwer
back
is
up.
coming back to do a Darth Maul animated series called Maul Shadow
About
Lord
time,
set right
bro.
after the Clone Wars.
The hell?
Anytime somebody asks him about doing Starkiller in live action, he either gets really excited or tries to turn the conversation so he doesn't say something that will get him in trouble with Lucasfilm. Perrin gives that wedding banquet
Yeah, you
speech,
can't
saying the
fumble
title
that
of the
bag, bruh.
episode. He said the thing inside the thing.
'Cause that's gonna be a lot of money.
Then another funny Easter egg here too. The game that Andor's group plays on Yavin 4 trying to resolve their conflict seems an awful lot like the Star Wars version of rock, paper, scissors. Then all
That
of a
was so
sudden,
lame.
one of the local large animals starts eating them all. It descends into absolute chaos, and he uses this as his chance to actually escape the planet. And they use it for the big reveal that this is Yavin 4 with the same temples in the background that we'll be seeing when the rebels set up shop here pretty soon. So all the people who thought they were going to die of starvation stranded on the planet will be totally
They'll
fine
be
if
saved
they
by
just
the
hold out
rebels.
a little bit longer. Whole bunch of rebels, whole bunch of supplies are going to be showing up pretty soon. Maybe the fact that
Shit, but
Andor
it's
got
been a
stuck
year
here
or
has something to
so.
do with him coming back to help these people,
Shit.
and that's why they set up shop here in
They'll
the first
probably be
place.
gone by
Like,
now.
we need to rescue the stranded group here, and oh, by the way, this is actually a pretty good place to have a base. Then the episode 3 title was Harvest, which is a reference to the harvest on Minaru as the situation with the Empire comes to a head. Andor returning in the TIE Avenger just in
snitched,
time
bro.
to help his friends, but not quite fast enough to save his best friend, Brasso. Definitely the saddest death this season so far. But they
You
do
never
start the
know, bro.
episode
They
with
can
a couple
always bring
funny
them
moments
back
about him trying to figure out
in
how to
Star
actually pilot
Wars.
the TIE Avenger with him floating through space and then just sending it careening all over the place. He says he's been upside down for days too, so like he's been sitting on the roof of the TIE Avenger because it's been flipped upside down. We eventually go back to Chandrila, where Leia is in her wedding gown. Mon Mothma starts mentioning her own mother and her troubled
She was
relationship
like, don't
with
get
her.
married.
Like, I hated my mother during
Basically.
my wedding. I was standing in your exact same spot, wearing the same type of dress. And the irony is that even though she's trying to help her daughter, like, you don't have to do this. We can just call this off. She's trying to be the friend to her daughter that her mother never was to her. Her daughter, Leia, winds up hating her just as much as she hated her own mother for different reasons, though, back in the day. I don't remember the show ever really explaining why her daughter had seemingly turned so traditionalist, like seemed so dead set on customs that seemingly stripped her of a lot of her own authority and agency inside this planned marriage. Maybe they'll get into that in the next couple of episodes because I think
She
we're
gonna
expecting some
regret
kind of
it later
tragic
on.
end for her daughter because her daughter is never mentioned in canon after this. So like the only way to explain that is if she dies at some point. They perform a very detailed, long marriage ceremony, and I don't think we've ever gone this deep on marriage inside Star Wars in such great detail. Like, we've seen people get married, like Han Solo and Leia were married for a long time. They obviously had Kylo Ren. So there's a lot of marriage that's
Kylo
talked about
Ren.
in Star Wars canon, but never in like such a great detailed way. Then they wind up using this episode to contrast a lot of different types of relationships with Dedra and Cyril's very twisted
They have like a
relationship
dark one.
because they have dinner with his mother in the episode.
Like
And
they
it
don't
is
be
the
wanting
most
to touch each other or
uncomfortable,
nothing, bro.
weird thing
It's like,
ever.
are y'all
And it
even
winds up
together
turning
at
into,
this
like,
point?
the battle of the bitches with Dedra versus his mother, with both of them having the upper hand at different points in the episode. You kind of notice her nervous tick too, like she's secretly kind of nervous to meet his mother and just gets dressed down constantly for the first part of the episode with his mother just laying into her as hard as possible. Like she does not waste a moment. Every single phrase that's out of her mouth is
She would have
basically
got
intended
put
to
out.
cut Dedra down. It's not really till Cyril kind of gives up and then goes and lies face down on the bed Dedra completely turns on his mother like, look, you will shut up or I will shut you up.
Check out the name tag. You're in my
She
room.
thought she was at work, bro.
Kind of implies that she also might get thrown in prison if she doesn't stop talking so much. Just another way to show you who has the power in their relationship. Like, she is very clearly the boss of her and Cyril's relationship. You can just sense what happens behind closed doors. But they have a whole lot of kinks that just seem like they feed on each other. Then they explain that Clea is
You
able
don't
to
even
get the
get to
message
talk,
from
bruh.
Andor, freaking out, telling him he can't contact Minaru, which causes him to take the TIE Avenger there, wind up saving his friend. Like, he did help his friends quite a bit. They would have died if he wouldn't have shown up.
No,
So
for
even though
sure,
it seems
bro.
like this is giant
They would've
cascading
had nowhere to go.
disaster in his storyline in the last part of the episode, generally it was good that he showed up rather than not showing up. There's a lot of Dedra history that we also get here too, like a lot of info dumps. She reveals her parents were arrested as criminals when she was 3 years old and was
Damn.
raised in what she calls an imperial kinderblock, which sounds an awful
Hell
lot
nah.
like the Star Wars version of kindergarten. In American society, that's typically the first year children attend primary school. And all I could do was laugh uncomfortably when she tried to justify not needing a mother's love. Like, I didn't know what I was missing, so I didn't need to be loved. definitely explains a lot of the
Dark
choices that her
humor,
character
huh?
makes. Like, you just start to get her character more, like, oh, that's why you're like this. Back on Chandrila, Luthen starts talking to Mon Mothma's butler, who finds out he's from Naboo, more Naboo references because of Padme's
Naboo.
headpiece. His mother is also from Gorman, connecting back to the Gorman plot this season, so we'll probably go back to that in the next block of episodes. Then back on Minaru, they try to show the reason why Brasso ultimately winds up dying is because their former ally sold them out to the Imperials, and Will,
It's
who is
always
his
that one guy,
girlfriend,
bruh.
and the Empire arrived at their shop at the exact wrong time. So even though Brasso got caught by the Imperials while he was trying to save their ally there, the other one sold them out, which is how the lieutenant knew that Bix was an undocumented illegal. So the Empire had already learned
I mean,
all
it
the
kind of
things they
worked
needed
out
to know
though
about
in a
their
way,
group, and were
because
gonna
if
come
not,
after
they
them
would
no
have
matter what.
went to their place and got all
Bix
of
winds
them.
up fighting off the super pervy lieutenant, who winds up falling and killing himself like an idiot. And Andor winds up arriving just as things really start to heat up and get crazy. Like, he arrives in the nick of time, but not quite fast enough to save Brasso. You also notice that he
Was a
clocks
little
the
too
Star
late.
Destroyer in orbit nearby, which could probably detect the TIE Avenger, but he doesn't care. Like, he wants to help his friends. Then I love the way they edited the last part of the
DJ
episode,
Droid.
intercutting with the Mon Mothma scenes. Her at the party, losing control, going crazy, trying to deal with the guilt of knowing that Tay Kolma is going to be killed by Luthen. We wind up finding out that it's Cinta who he calls in to do the job, who clocks Vel Sartha, like, oh, it's you're here. And clearly knowing why she's there, like, oh, you probably came to kill this guy. You can kind of see how compartmentalized the rebellion is, that like Vel Sartha wouldn't know what Luthen is doing separate from what she's doing with him. Andor winds up helping them
No
using the
question
weapons of the TIE
asked.
Avenger. Like, even though it's a terrible shot, the weapons are powerful enough to take out the Imperials, says his goodbye to Brasso, but isn't able to save him, so R.I.P. And they take off in the TIE Avenger.
That's at
but
least what we
maybe
think.
he will come back to pick up B2 Emo. We'll see. I'm gonna guess that Brasso's girlfriend is just gonna take care of B2 Emo like she said she was gonna do earlier in the episode. Like, oh, I'll just handle it. Well, forget about them. Don't worry, you won't miss them. Maybe Andor will come back at some point in later episodes to
I
pick him up.
doubt it. I don't think
Then the
so.
way they
Oh,
end the episode,
actually,
they make it
yeah.
seem like Cinta is about to just like turn around and shoot Tay Kolma in his seat there, who definitely deserved to die. Like, he turned into a real dirtbag that last episode. But there's a
Shit,
bunch
he
of
was
stuff
broke.
going on
He
during
needed
the
that
episodes.
money,
If there's any
bruh.
Easter eggs you spotted in the first 3 that I didn't talk about in my video, write them below in the comments. Overall, it just seems like a really solid series so far, but I haven't seen the entire series yet, so we'll see what the next block of episodes is like. My episodes 3, 4, and 5 video will post next week after they release those. There were a lot of movies and TV shows they talked about at Celebration, so I'll try to do videos for all that stuff in the next couple weeks. Real
But that's it. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.